Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. Super excited for today's podcast. Number one, because I have Mr. Allan Matheson from Golden Pair with me today. So always that's a good help for any technical challenges that I generally struggle with during these podcasts. But two, we're talking about some of the more nuanced, kind of protocols across, because I've got Kevin Chan here with Across, and it's so imperative that we're able to move currencies, tokens, or assets around the various blockchains. And so when we're kind of thinking about being in a crypto winter or wherever we sit today, Bitcoin's right around 19,000 and doing its thing. This is really the time to build the infrastructure and really make sure that the users, as well as the other developers, have the tools to be building and scaling ready for the next bull market. We certainly saw a lot of issues in the last bull for scaling and usability. Bridges were breaking left and right. Hacks happen, every couple of days. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and I want to make sure to introduce my co-host today, Allan Matheson. Allan, you just want to give a quick background on yourself, if that's okay?
Sure, guys. Thanks. Hi, I'm a tech entrepreneur, built and sold a few different companies around the world, and really saw crypto a number of years ago and couldn't get it out of my mind. And here I am as a sort of crypto degen. Founded a crypto hedge fund which deals in liquid tokens called Golden Pair Capital. In fact, Kevin is on our investment committee, so I've had the pleasure of knowing Kevin for many years, and we have some shared pursuits other than crypto degeneracy, and really looking forward to this podcast.
Fabulous. So Kevin, let's go, before we get into Across and whatever you're working on, your project that you're on today, let's kind of go back and what was your first kind of experience with blockchain cryptocurrency, and what kind of led you to be where you are today?
I guess it goes back to when a good friend of mine, who used to work for me as a trader. So I used to trade bonds at Goldman Sachs and spent about 15 years doing that, 12 years of the time in New York. And I met a good friend there, and he was actually involved in the space. And he ended up buying my kids. I had two boys at the time, 1 Bitcoin, and he just deposited, or it was in an email. He sent it as an email and told me how to deposit it. And that was really how the curiosity kind of got stirred. And I started looking at it and asking a lot of questions about it and learning a lot more. And that was actually the same person that brought me into DeFi a lot deeper. His name's Hart Lambert, and he's actually the founder of UMA. And it was probably not until so he probably gave us 1 Bitcoin in 2013, I would say, and it was not until 2020 that I really got involved. I was very curious, always asking questions, and it was during that beginning of that year where he started saying like he needed some help in this project. And I'd known about it, and I'd been supporting it and helping it, but I didn't really know it deeply. And then once I was invited to kind of get a little deeper into this, that's really when I kind of fell down that rabbit hole and right into DeFi summer.
Yeah, it's a good time to jump right in as soon as things are heating up, and but coming from a very TradFi background, how was it trying to retrain your brain to, the thought of cryptocurrencies and the open ledger or the secure ledger of kind of blockchain tech overall?
Right. I think it's definitely a little overwhelming at first. And I think it's very intimidating. In the TradFi space, I'm very much, I would say I'm a little quantitative, but not very much so. We trade a product, US government bonds, that's quite technical, and it's very much in the weeds, and you have to be very deep in the details. So I think that helped in some ways, but this was a much kind of deeper technology. And I would say that looking at the kind of like the pipes of the financial system, you definitely appreciate the blockchain a lot more. And you start to understand, what the blockchain was achieving or what it's trying to accomplish. So I think from that angle, it was very helpful. But going into the space and working with other people, I'd say that, you're definitely intimidated because you're like, I don't really know that much about coding. I've got very basic kind of coding language, but you start to realize, like in the DeFi space, that that it goes both ways. DeFi is decentralized finance, so there is still a finance aspect of it. So I started realizing that when people were speaking to me, they were intimidated too, because they were thinking, well, this guy must know a lot about finance, and I only know anything about coding. So it was a really good marriage between the two, and we start having a bigger respect for each other. We get the two different sides, like a TradFi side and a kind of developer or like a computer science side. So I think that really worked out well, and that's why I fell in love with that DeFi space, because we could really both contribute in the same ways.
Yeah, the what you guys are touching, at UMA, and we'll get into Across here in a second, is something that right now is a massive lift for the TradFi system to do, to understand what something should be priced at, how are they accounting for those various metrics. You understand that system, much better than I do. And it is, horribly inaccurate in the TradFi space, with days, weeks, or months to get to settlements in some cases, which is the entire GameStop, entire play altogether, is that nobody knows how many shares are outstanding.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. I think there's a problem with just getting, even in like the blockchain space, there's a problem of just getting information and information accurately and quickly. A lot of what's appealing about, say, Ethereum is about smart contracts. But at the end of the day, if you want to settle that contract, you need the correct information to settle that contract. And I think, something like UMA, we can get deeper into it. It's an optimistic oracle where we could basically provide any information from the actual blockchain, or any information from the real world, and use that to settle contracts. And I think there's a lot of applications to it, but it definitely solves a lot of problems that are already existing in the world or in the TradFi space.
So Kev, obviously you come from a TradFi background, working with Goldman Sachs as a market maker, and the idea is that DeFi has the capability to disrupt parts of TradFi. What do you think will be part of the building blocks of that disruption? And I presume that UMA would be part of that disruption.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of different ways that DeFi disrupts TradFi. I think the big thing is like decentralization and kind of removing these strong powers, whether it be banks or exchanges, that basically dictate all the rules and control all the fees. But there's still a huge hesitancy for the financial markets or the traditional financial markets to really adopt DeFi. And I think one of the big kind of blockers would be the idea of like finality on the blockchain, and the idea of no recourse. So, on the blockchain, if a contract is settled, it's settled and it's final. There's no way of kind of going back in time and changing those terms or making it more fair if something was off. So there's really effectively no recourse. But in the TradFi world, or in our regular world, there's lawyers everywhere. If something goes wrong, so even though something settled after fact or the market closed and this was the final settlement price, people can call on their lawyers and they could dispute it, and they could highlight any issues with it. And many times, this is how it works, and things get changed. So I do think that UMA or an optimistic oracle kind of provides that kind of buffer from what we have right now in the DeFi space, where UMA effectively would come in and provide a price, say, but also give a dispute period where people can challenge that price. And by doing that, you kind of bring in that idea of slowing down the process a little bit, and then allowing anybody, completely permissionless, to come in and basically dispute the process, and then pause and let everyone kind of assess and then vote to resolve it. So I think many cases it's possible that TradFi could use something like this to kind of ease themselves into the DeFi space, if by kind of not having that recourse.
Yeah, Kevin, do you, and again, this is just a blue sky ask, do you see, DeFi and TradFi, merging in the near future, where it's kind of they're one and the same?
I wouldn't say they're one and the same. Like I would definitely see parts of it merging together. And I would not think that, I would not think that DeFi would completely replace TradFi. I mean, they're just kind of different. There's aspects of it that just are different, I think. When you're transacting trustlessly, I think it's not for everybody, right? I don't think everybody wants to transact trustlessly. And so there will be some subset of transactions or activities that people will prefer in the DeFi way, and there will be some activity that people prefer the TradFi way, right? And there's just certain assets that you probably might not want to put on the chain, like I don't know, maybe it's like your house or something, right? It's like those types of transactions are very different, right? And there may be some more personal kind of aspects of it there as well.
I agree. There's sometimes that it's okay to slow down a transaction. And it's great that we can have, almost instantaneous settlements on blockchain. But when the TradFi version of that is sometimes days, moving that to hours and at least giving everyone a chance to confirm, is this correct? Is this not correct? Because you're right. It is final and there is no dispute. Blockchain Oracle that's going to go back and undo anything once it's been done. So I really like that perspective of sometimes we just need a little bit of time. I always say blockchain is designed for computers, a little less for humans. And that's where we need to slow down and make sure that we're integrating ourselves into the system appropriately.
That's a great jumping off point for there are so many participants in DeFi, and I don't know that all that many of the average participants, non-builders, really appreciate the important role that oracles play in throughout crypto, really. Can you take a sec and just walk us through, you mentioned your optimistic oracle. How is it different to other established oracles, and what are the sort of pros and cons?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, people don't really understand what's kind of happening in the background and how do we settle these smart contracts, and what are the trade-offs in these designs. So I think most people are familiar with an oracle in the sense of something like a chain link. You would imagine almost like a price feed constantly being pumped into the blockchain. And most people are familiar with that, and they would use that to settle their contracts. And it works fairly well for things like a liquid asset, like imagine like a Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's very transparent. There's a lot of exchanges that trade it, so it's easy to bring in that price. And that price is also even on-chain as well in many of the decentralized exchanges. But if you start thinking, if you start looking at other products and you want to really expand Web3 and DeFi, to be more comparable to the actual financial world, then you need something a little bit more robust, right? So like Chainlink wouldn't be able to feed in weather data or like sports games results that easily. They could find some kind of janky way of getting it, and then maybe having it very centralized and maintained by a certain person, but it's not really kind of decentralized in a sense. Whereas if you have an oracle like UMA, which we call an optimistic oracle, we can do certain things like this. And how the oracle works is effectively, it's optimistic in the sense that we assume that when someone proposes that price, so anyone can propose a price or a result for a contract, we assume that they're correct and that they're right. But we have a dispute period, say it's 1 hour, 2 hours, even a day, where someone could come in and just say, well, that's not correct, and I want to dispute it. And then once that happens, we actually take it to a vote. And then our UMA token holders will all come in and they will all vote to figure out, what the actual result was. And it's all economically incentivized. So the person who is proposing will have to put up a bond. The person who is disputing will also put up a bond. And these bonds could all be adjusted in order to suit that purpose of that contract. So yeah, I think this is the kind of like a different way of thinking about an oracle. And I think that this allows you to bring in a lot more different assets and prices, but also gives you a lot more precision, right? Instead of setting a price safe every 5 minutes on the blockchain, you could say, I want a very specific price at this second, right? Because it's an options contract or it's a derivatives contract. It's very sensitive to the price. So you can be very precise in terms of what you want. So I think it's a very different kind of way of looking at an oracle. Like the one downside to it is the fact of the dispute period. And there's ways of managing around it, but now you can't do this quick finality of selling things right away. But there are certainly assets that they don't really care about that. But there are certain things that do. For example, like liquidations in DeFi would very much care about it if you want to do like atomic transactions where there's a bot that's going to be liquidating this person and they're getting flash loans in. So everything needs to happen in one kind of block. So stuff like that would be difficult to do using UMA. But things that can take a little longer time and are a little bit more complex can be used with UMA.
Yeah, and we're still really early days. I mean, when you were given some Bitcoin back in 2013, it was probably cool, but there was not much use case or real world utility there. And then when you got involved, kind of from a full time perspective in early 2020, you were probably thinking like, hey, we're mainstream, like any day now. Here we go, and here comes this bull run, and now here we are, still looking at kind of a world that I would say is very similar to 1994, 1995. That there's a big group of us that are really passionate about this, and a lot of people that have dipped a toe in, but still aren't believers, and we haven't seen the large institutions really show up yet, which is who we need.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right, and that's exactly, you're describing exactly how I felt in 2013. I got this, I thought it was cool, and I just I didn't really know what to do with it. Right, it sat there in my Coinbase account at the time. But 2020, like it really all clicked. Like, because being a person in finance, it just all made sense. Like I can understand what this technology is used for. But then like 10 years down the line, we could be using blockchain for something completely different. Like we haven't even thought about all the uses for it. And it's exactly your analogy with the internet, where 94, 95, we didn't know that people and our kids would be on social media and doing TikTok and stuff like that. And that'd be the thing, right?
We could have shut it all down right then and saved ourselves a lot of problems. But let's go ahead and pivot now, because Across is amazing. And I know you're really proud of it. So if you wouldn't mind, give us that kind of longer elevator pitch about what it is, the problems it solves, and how it integrates into everything we just talked about with oracles.
Yeah, definitely. So Across is an optimistic cross-chain bridge, and or the protocol effectively facilitates bridging of assets between different L2s and L1s, and it solves a problem where there's great scaling solutions out there right now, and soon to get better, but there's some kind of trade-offs. A perfect example would be, say, Optimism in Arbitrum. They're optimistic rollups. They provide lower cost for transactions and faster speeds. When you bring your assets there, it's quite easy to bring your assets over. It doesn't take too long. But when you want to bring your assets back onto mainnet, then there's a 7-day kind of delay. And for most people, 7 days is quite a long time. Especially when everyone's familiar with instantaneous kind of transactions and working the blockchain. So bridges basically solve problems like that, where now you need to somehow allow users to get their funds back there faster, right? And what happens most of the time is it ends up being more of a financial problem, right? You have someone who has some idle assets sitting on L1 Ethereum. You have a person on Arbitrum who wants to get their assets back onto L1. So then they're like, okay, that's like a match. Well, why don't we just kind of do a trade here? I'll take your assets in Arbitrum and bridge them back myself. I'll lend you my assets for 7 days, and you can take them right away on L1. So that's basically the bridging idea. So it could work quite simply as may say, like the three of us in this group just talking to each other and say, hey, I know Jay, I know Allan, and we could just do that, and we can send money to each other's wallet. But it doesn't really work when we don't know all the people in the world and everyone wants to do this with each other, right? So that becomes a problem. Like, how do we trustlessly do this? And there's different solutions out there where people would use validators to kind of say like, hey, well, if Allan has deposited into this box in Arbitrum, and I can validate that it's done, then you can pick it up in L1. And there's solutions like there's solutions where people can like lock assets up in a box, and then that converts it to a different asset. And so there's always different solutions, and I think that they all have some kind of trade-offs with it. Some of them might be a little easier and simpler to understand, but like, for example, validators, you need some kind of number of signers to basically validate that it's okay. Well, what if these signers like are all are hacked, or a portion of them are hacked, or whether they're all centralized? Like, who's running these validators? So I think that's some of these concerns out there. And I think for us, when we're thinking about this problem, we immediately thought about our Oracle because there's a good application for this Oracle. Now we can instead of relying, say, on some bridges with relying on like 20 to 25 validators, which are generally people that are concentrated in the group, we could just rely on anybody in the world to come in and dispute it, right? So it kind of flips the problem around. Like instead of having 20, 25 people validating, we actually have anybody in the world disputing, right? And we always assume it's right. So how the process would work would be like, okay, now Allan deposits his ETH on Arbitrum, and he says, I've deposited, let me pick it up on mainnet. And we'll say, okay, wait, how about you wait an hour and let us kind of validate that, right? And or let everyone look at it and see if it's true. And if anyone believes it's not true, they can dispute it, and that stops the process. And they say, well, Allan never put it in there, and so he's not getting this money, right? So that's kind of how the process works. We do, obviously it's a little bit more complex than that, but we do have relayers, for example, in between to help speed up the process more, so people can even front money for, say, that 1 hour to get the process going even faster. And then effectively it becomes this instantaneous bridging where people can basically move assets from Arbitrum to L1 or back and forth or other destinations. That's basically the idea of how an optimistic bridge works.
Yeah. So let's take a second. And I always, the audience is sometimes very technical and understands what a bridge is. And other times, let's go take a second and explain what's happening here. So when you have various, level zeros, level ones, and level twos, they really are just running in their own chain. And Kevin and Allan, please correct me as I oversimplify this. And so very similar to this is the early issues that we had with email way back in the days with CompuServe and Prodigy prior to kind of you could only send emails like inside CompuServe, inside Prodigy. Like you were kind of stuck inside your little ecosystem, which is a lot of what it used to be kind of in Ethereum. Either you were in Ethereum or you were in, a various other chain, and you were kind of stuck there until third parties like Cross came in and created bridges. And so with that, it's entirely opened up this ecosystem of, somebody may say, look, I love storing all of my assets and my financials on Ethereum mainnet, but I want to do all of my kind of gaming over on, a different chain. And so, but that still means you have to bring assets back and forth in a variety of ways. And this is extremely complicated to do, because there's not a week that goes by, there's not a major bridge that's hacked, which is, again, one of the major vulnerability points of this entire ecosystem. So did I oversimplify, or did we hit it on a little bit? Anything to add?
I think that's the key. I think those are the key kind of issues that are that we stick out there. And, it's definitely a difficult problem, and people have highlighted this many times. And there's definitely been hacks that have highlighted this issue. And it comes down to the bridge design and the security kind of assumptions that are being made for all of this.
Well, and I think, maybe you could speak to that a little bit in terms of how has the design and the desire to focus mostly on L2 to L1, what are the design choices there? Why did you make those design choices? And also, I guess, design choices around capital efficiency as well, right, that kind of differentiate from a security and capital efficiency point of view the Across protocol.
Yeah, definitely. So what we've generally focused on everything within the Ethereum ecosystem. So most of our destinations are effectively L1s, L2s. They all inherit a lot of the security features of mainnet Ethereum. With some of the bigger hacks that have occurred, a lot of them were doing L1 to L1 types transfers, for example. Some of them effectively will require you, say, wrapping that asset, let's say it's Ethereum, with the, effectively almost like the bridging entity, and then having that asset, that wrapped asset be on the other L1. So when you do something like that, when it's kind of wrapped in that way, you're effectively inheriting the security of that bridge, right? And if that bridge gets compromised, then all these assets could get drained. And that's occurred, like for example, with Wormhole, where that effectively happened. I mean, people once that was compromised, all the assets were drained, and everyone who was holding that Solana ETH were basically affected by it, right? So we've tried to avoid some of this, some of these L1 L1 transfers, and it's not saying that we won't attempt to build our bridge to do that in the future, but there are definitely these kind of issues where there may be the only kind of representation of ETH is this kind of wrapped ETH of some sort in that space. So that's one thing that we've done. Was we've focused primarily on the Ethereum ecosystem for now. The other thing that's kind of interesting that we've done is most bridges, like I think Allan was alluding to, most bridges will have multiple liquidity pools on each destination. So if, for example, if we have a bridge that serves Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, there would actually effectively be liquidity pools in each of these destinations. And it would be up to these liquidity providers to provide enough liquidity in each area so that when people start moving assets around, there would be enough assets in each place, right? And obviously the prices would change back and forth, and could create some arbitrage. We thought that was actually very inefficient, and a lot of these are using AMMs, and there's a lot of slippage. So we thought that really, like as we described earlier, it's much more of a borrowing and lending problem, where people need to borrow your assets for 7 days or maybe for an hour, and why have these separate pools instead of just having one pool? So we effectively have one pool that's sitting in the most secure area, which is L1 mainnet, and we allow transfers to go to different areas. But as these assets start to move, we will have effectively have bots in our relayers that'll help basically rebalance these assets over time. So that's kind of the design choice. It's a security and a capital efficiency design choices that we have, and it kind of sets us apart a little bit differently from other bridges.
How hard is this problem to solve?
I mean, to solve it very well, it's definitely hard. And also, like, you're also exposed. You're exposing yourself all the time, right, to potential new innovations in how you could get hacked, or as you grow as well. And a lot of these hacks occur during upgrades. Like if you're upgrading your system and you've missed something, right, and now there's a vulnerability, even though everything was audited before, like then it just exposes the whole system. So it is definitely a difficult kind of problem, and as it grows, like you find better solutions, but you're also exposing yourself each time you're providing a better solution for better capital efficiency or more routes. So it's an ongoing kind of battle, and it's a real grind, I think, for a lot of people in this bridge space.
And you're managing. Keep going on.
I was gonna change, like, I'd say, how did it evolve? Like, obviously Risk Labs as part of UMA must have conceptualized it. And then can you speak a little bit to the evolution of it, the evolution of the UMA community, and then an Across community? I guess how much did the Across community end up gaining its own traction as an entity to push forward the project?
I think with UMA, there's one thing that I would kind of criticize ourselves on. Like we do a good job of thinking up concepts and ideas, and with an oracle like this optimistic oracle, you could build anything. So there's like all these different ideas. We start off with a lot to do with synthetic assets, and people using that to kind of create interesting risks. But we never really built the project, another separate project full on using Oracle. So a lot of times we would have the proof of concept, and we try to hand it off to friends or partners in the space, and it never really got to where we wanted it to be. And with Across, we kind of I would say we kind of started off in that direction. And as we start picking up traction, we start understanding this product was a really good product. We said, we can't let this fail. Like, we need to ensure that this project does well. And this could really showcase UMA and also an independent project on its own. So I think we really kind of dedicated a lot more resources to this. We effectively have a separate team from the same foundation that runs UMA or that serves UMA. We have about 14 people on this team that are dedicated on the Cross project. So it's kind of involved in that way where it's just very much a full-on project on its own. I would say our community members have first kind of migrated there to kind of support Across, and now it's got its own community members. It's kind of doing its own thing. There's a group of people that they're supporting it, building dashboards and proposing ideas. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to see. But then you can still see the connection between the two communities for sure.
Now in traditional TradFi, which let's go back and talk about this. There's lots of times that a bank is going to send funds to a different currency or do lots of things, and these take days, weeks. I mean, when if any of you guys understand payroll, like you will start the payroll process 4 to 7 days early just to get money moving, even if you're all domestic. Like these are huge problems that exist. And Kevin's over here saying like, yeah, like we might slow it down by like an hour. Like we're talking about going from horse and buggy to like, a modern vehicle, a modern car. Like there's huge problems that have never been thought of, because if the horse and buggy kind of run off the road, you're not going to get in too much trouble real quickly, because you can, whoa, let's stop and back this thing up. You're going 100 miles per hour down the road in a modern vehicle, and you touch the curb, like things are going to happen very quickly and fall off. So, Kevin, the other side of this is when we're talking TradFi, like there's no bank upgrade that's done in anything less than years. And you guys are upgrading things so fast. How do you manage, making sure that you're moving and plugging the holes in kind of in the code, but you're also not exposing yourself, as you said before? Like how is the cycle? How deep is that cycle?
I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of coordination involved in all this. We have a team of people that have a lot of experience in the software development space, in product management space. So there's like checklists upon checklists that go through, and we're making sure that every part works. Lots of testing that needs to go through. I'd say like some of the front end aspects of it may not be as severe as in terms of security issues. So, but like anything with smart contract related, like that's very extensive testing, and we have dedicated smart contract engineers that would do that work, and then we get audits on that as well. So there's it's a very different type of kind of process. I mean, I'm not an engineer myself, but when you think about it in the way they describe it, there's always this idea that you should build build fast and break things. Like you can't really do that in the same way in Web3. Like when you break things, lots of people lose a lot of money. So it's very different that way. Like you can't just keep iterating. Like you have to like build and be fairly confident of what you have, and then release that. And then when you build the next one, there's a huge process planning it. Like the front end may look different. Like it may be cool things and make things a lot better for the user, but in the back end, like it needs to take time to build.
What's the, if we just go out, 3, 4, 5 years, it's hard to kind of see and understand anything more than 6 months in crypto space. But what's the goal of how this should look, in the future?
People always talk about it. It's a multi-chain universe kind of idea. And I very much believe it's a huge possibility.
Agreed.
And what it would kind of look like to me would be you have a place where people want to keep their assets safely, and that may be Ethereum mainnet. You keep most of your assets there, and that kind of becomes like the underlying bank settlement layer. And then you have all these different chains or L2s or maybe L3s in the future that have different purposes. Maybe it's for gaming, as you said earlier, or it's very focused on like trading or some kind of other DeFi applications. And then people can move assets to these different locations and utilize them. But I think what ends up happening more is that it may not even be like in 3 to 5 years down the line, the average person may not even know the difference. So like when they think about gaming, when they think about banking, they just see kind of like their websites and they kind of go in and they do the thing. but in the background, all these assets are moving. It's kind of the same way that we think about, okay, well, we want to buy something with a credit card, or we want to pay it off with our bank, and I go play a game somewhere and put in my credit card there. Like, we don't know what's going on in the background, but I think these bridges may end up being that background in that infrastructure. So there may be, instead of like these individuals right now kind of using our front end to move assets around, there may be this process where these larger kind of almost like institutions or DAOs that are funding assets back and forth in large size, in some kind of frequency. And they may be the only users of the bridges, where the front end users or the retail users themselves are only seeing the front end, and that's it.
And I absolutely love where we're at in Web3 right now, because we're all in here playing with these protocols. We're playing and understanding. You're building them, Allan. You're breaking them all the time, and really we have such a nuanced view of this. But in a few years, truly, I believe exactly as you said, no one's even going to have one care how this operates in the background. This is all going to be operated by, various levels of AI computers, that are just reading and writing and spitting out, what are the results. So to have kind of that knowledge right now of saying like, no, you don't understand. Back in the day, I actually had to set up my bridge, get everything ready, and then make the steps to move across. We send emails every day. We have no idea where it's going or what the server it's going to hit. Is it Azure, S3? Is it Microsoft? Like, Nobody matters. It just goes. And is that the future you're describing? That's just, where's it going and let it all kind of happen fluidly in the background?
Exactly. I think that's exactly right. And maybe it may be happening sooner than we think, but I definitely feel like that's the direction we're moving.
Love it.
And I think some of it's already happening, right, Kev? Like, you're already seeing some of this, like with people playing with relayers and kind of, I think we had a discussion about that once. It was really interesting to me that, there are, as like an average user in DeFi, you don't see what's even like one layer below. And one layer below, there are these roles that can be played, like relayers in the Across protocol, or like some of the MEV stuff that's going on, where, there's a degree of sophistication, that sits just below, where you can start to see some of these movements happening at scale, where people are realizing efficiencies and arbitraging, and I think that's kind of like an indicator of where we're going, considering what you were just mentioning, Kev.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, people can get involved in different ways in terms of using that ecosystem. I think I think right now that you can choose a level where you don't even just notice anything, and everything just so seamless and everything just moves, for sure.
And then you start digging and you're like, wait, what? What's going on here? Wow, that's okay. Interesting. Anyway, also congratulations. I guess today was a big day for you guys. You kind of unveiled your tokenomic model. And one thing I always thought was really neat about you guys is you have always had kind of very different models, or like very unique and innovative kind of alignment of, and I think kind of understanding of game theory. With UMA, you talked before about you have to put up a bond in order to dispute, and then you have UMA holders who are incentivized to vote and vote correctly. So it's a really, there are interesting models around what you guys have done with UMA. Maybe take a minute and describe to us the model and some of your thinking around it in terms of Across.
So today I think the community has known that we want to release a token. We want to basically establish the DAO and have the community really drive the next steps. So we've announced it today, or more formally provide those numbers so people can go onto Across and check for what their airdrop allocation is, what we're thinking about the token going forward. There's a lot of, it's very exciting to the community at this point. There's definitely some components of it that we've added that are a little different than other kind of token drops. I think we are definitely focused on kind of giving the user the standard things would be we're giving users a lot of power to control the parameters of the bridge. So in the future, they'll be more easily able to kind of vote to change, adding assets, adding new destinations. And then there's a couple of things that are quite unique. They kind of use the UMA kind of oracle that we're thinking about. Is like one thing is the idea of optimistic governance with the token. And what this is a problem that we've definitely noticed in our space, where most DAOs, they're decentralized, but really the majority of the assets are controlled by a multi-sig, and that the project team basically controls this multi-sig. So even though token holders could be on snapshot voting and saying, okay, well, we want to like send these assets to this entity to pay for whatever, the project team actually has to use the multi-sig and then sign and send those assets. So it's really not as decentralized as you think in some ways. And obviously decentralization has varying degrees. And I think this problem was really highlighted with the whole kind of situation with Rari and Fuse, the Fuse pools. Faye and Rari, and it was dealing with the Fuse pool hacks. And so a lot of the victims of the hacks wanted to have money repaid back to them. And there was a vote that occurred. They said, yes, we should pay these hack victims. And there's a certain amount of money set aside for this. And the project team took a long time to kind of do anything. They never did it. They never dispersed the funds. And then they decide, oh, well, it's been a month and a half, 2 months. Let's vote again on this. These are the new terms now. But the people are like, whoa, we already voted for this, right? It should have been done. Is it no, we're just going to vote again, right? And they voted for something else. And I think the resolution was still okay at the end because people were all complaining. But if they were done in a way where we're forced to move these funds and we're forced to pay back these people, then it would have been much more decentralized. And the token holders actually would have really had the power. And I think with optimistic governance is something we're building. And I believe it's close to being done. And we're in coordination with Snapshot. It's been an idea to talk about where effectively you can have a smart contract wallet where anybody can propose a transaction in it, but anybody could stop a transaction during a dispute window. And this dispute window could be much longer. It could be 24 hours, could be even a week, say. And then people can vote and have very specific things in their snapshot votes, and token holders can vote on snapshot. Say that it could be like repay the hack victims. These are all their addresses. Please send X amount of tokens to each one, right? And then if the vote passes, then now it's validated that it's passed, and anybody could go and propose this transaction on the smart contract wallet, and then send those funds out. But if someone tried to do something malicious and say, okay, well, actually, I'm going to send all the money to my own wallet, then someone would stop the process and dispute it, right? But if someone did the correct thing and sent it to all the wallets listed on that proposal, then nobody stops it and it goes through. So now you have a way of kind of enforcing token holder votes without the project team kind of controlling that multi-sig. So that's something like it's not going to be in place immediately, but it is something that we will want to have for Across. And I think this will be very powerful in terms of controlling parameters, controlling the treasury and everything in that system.
How much fun are you having? Oh, I'm sorry, Allan. How much fun are you having really rewriting the rules on finance and all this? Because what you're saying, I mean, we've heard it time and time again. It makes perfect sense. Decentralized autonomous organization should be exactly that. But you're right. Most of the time, the technology is not quite there. You can vote, but the vote is it's a thing registered on chain. It requires someone to go do something. I mean, how much fun are you having just theorizing the way this should go?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I think the main reason why we can do all this is because of the Oracle. And it's like, I would say the last 2 years, it's almost been a little bit of a struggle and a joy at the same time. Like, joy being like, you can think of all these crazy things to do and all these great things you can build with Oracle, but then focusing our resources and time to find those few things to kind of really bootstrap and jumpstart it has been a challenge. So you could see we're being pulled in many directions a lot of times, where some teams want us to do this and some teams don't want to do that. But now we're just trying to really just nail down the ones we really want to work on. And I think something like this, I think is quite important. I think it's important for the entire ecosystem and entire community to have something like this. So yeah, so it's very exciting. We're effectively just replacing legal contracts with code all the time, I think.
Kevin, I mean, fabulous really to hear everything you guys are working on, how much you're also really looking forward into where this asset class should go and trying to solve problems that most people aren't even thinking about right now. And that's that execution side of things. For the tiny amount of people that have been misconvenienced by something like a vote not being forward through, you want to make sure that these are things that are ingrained in all DAOs going forward. So I love that. That being said, there's still a lot of work that you guys are doing on Across. You've got your token. What's the next steps that you guys have going on right now for Across?
So the token's announced in, I'm guessing 3 weeks or so, we should be launching this token. That is the plan. And it's going to be exciting, I think, because we want to use, in addition to giving people the power to control Across and to have ownership of it, we also want it to be a way to grow the entire project in the protocol. So there's going to be some interesting incentivization programs. We already have a referral program that's happening, which has been quite successful in getting new users. And it's kind of taking, us being the TradFi kind of people, we just thought it made sense. Like, if you can refer your friends to use a bridge, or you can get a project integration to use a bridge, I think people should be rewarded for that. So that's something that's ongoing, and it's people will be able to claim their tokens for that. But the interesting thing that we really want to work on is this idea called reward locking. And I think Allan's very familiar with, and yourself, Jay, with just like liquidity mining and how people reward in that space. So we still need liquidity for us to grow our bridge. But I find that one of the challenges in this space for liquidity mining is it's very mercenary. People are there for the money. They're in and out, right? They're not really committed to keeping their funds there. And then there's definitely mechanisms out there that try and encourage people to lock tokens and try and keep them in that system. But at the end of the day, it's a very short-term kind of process where people are just throwing more and more rewards and bribing people to kind of be providing liquidity. So the idea of reward locking for us is that we think that people who are staked longer, who are committed to staying with the project and not selling the tokens that they earn, should be rewarded a higher return. And so what we've created this mechanism where everyone can start off providing liquidity and staking their liquidity shares, and they will earn a return. But each day that you stay there and you don't claim your rewards, then your return starts to go up. So we effectively have a multiplier where from 0 to 100 days, your multiplier can go from 1 to 3. So the longer you stay there, then the higher this multiplier will go, and the faster you earn your rewards. But once you claim your rewards, that's a signal that, okay, you probably want to claim and get out and sell some tokens. Then your multiplier would reset back to 1. So it's a very we're not doing anything where we're forcing anyone to lock tokens, like say in Curve, where you're locking it for 4 years or whatever. People can choose what they want to do, but if they stay longer and they don't claim their rewards, then their return rate starts to go up. So I think it's another kind of fun thing to try out, and I think it really rewards the correct people in your system. And I find, to me, the big thing, it's not about just the money and the returns. I find that the longer a person is engaged in your system, I feel the more chances that they will actually become a community member, and they'll actually understand what you're building and actually want to participate. So I think by having that little incentive for them to kind of have some skin in the game and not just be farming and dumping your tokens all the time, then they might actually watch your token price, then they might actually join your Discord, then they might actually want to contribute in different ways and understand what the product does. So really excited to try it. And I think it'd be something novel that, I think we've had other projects talk to us about it too. And they want to actually try and use this as well. So it's something that's not been announced, but it's been in the background, and there's definitely people in the system kind of know about it.
I'm going to give you credit right now for coining what I now refer to as the liquidity mercenary category. And there's going to be t-shirts and everything else made up with that terminology. So I love that, Kevin. Absolutely fabulous. Really, really exciting. And again, I love the word that you threw in there, which is we're trying it. And I think that's the point we're at now. It's like, there's no certainty in anything Web3. But this makes sense. And I'm really excited to see where it goes. So thank you for that. Allan, bring us home here. What's after kind of everything we've said and heard with Kevin today, and also everything we're watching in this asset class, what do you, how are you feeling today?
I think a lot of people get really down in a bear market. But actually I find it quite exciting. Like, in a bull market, not only do you have this situation where like people just kind of throw money at the market and stuff goes up and everybody thinks that they're like, tech geniuses. And, most of them probably really aren't. But you have also projects which are ridiculous that are, increasing in value and are riding these narratives. And yet in the bear markets, you come across teams like Across and UMA that, UMA's been around for a long time. Across is newer, but they're really like pioneering new ideas and new constructs and new technology where they clearly have a vision of like how things are going to look in the future, and this being sort of a backbone piece of technology. And that to me is like a really exciting part. And you can use that as, person in the space to look at like, well, this is a team that's doing great things and trying to understand, well, when the next bull market does come, what are those kinds of projects and spaces that will really look interesting as an investor, as a community member, as a whatever. And there's a massive amount of new stuff out there. There's like whatever areas people building on the idea of soulbound tokens, or real world assets on chain, or GameFi. There are tons of different little niches, but it's actually almost more obvious, I think, in a bear market to see some of that really exciting, interesting innovation like Kevin and the team are up to over at Across.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo really, Allan, a lot of what you said, and Kevin, you as well, that there's a lot of people building a lot of things, and there's so many cool things that every single day I'm being, like, there's this, there's that, there's this new level 2, there's this new level 0, and all these things. But the problem is, it's like highways to nowhere. And so without, the optimistic oracle of UMA, and without kind of what Across is building of actually being able to go from one of these chains to the next, it's just a series of islands of which no one is ever going to actually be able to explore, because there's only so many ways you can so many on-ramps. I mean, it's really hard to get money into the blockchain, and it really shouldn't be. And so, with having proper bridges, with having proper, oracles and price structures and everything else, this safety level just goes up, and the confidence level needs to go up a little bit. So really, Kevin, I absolutely thank you for today, for everything you've done. And said, what's the best way, if people are interested in learning more, they want to join your community, what's the best way to find you guys?
Yeah, we're on Twitter, we're on Discord, but on Twitter, it's easiest to find us there, probably at Across Protocol, and then at UMA Protocol. Yeah, those are the easiest ways to find us.
Love it. And Allan, if people are sick of being their own, DeFi degen and want to get Golden Pair involved to kind of take a look at the disaster portfolios that they put together for themselves, what's the best place to find you guys?
Yeah, you can reach me at Allan, ALLAN, at goldenpair.capital is the best way to reach me.
Love it. Love it. Thank you guys. yWhales. This is Allan Matheson as a co-host, and Kevin from Across and UMA. So thank you guys, and we'll catch you guys next time. Be good.
Thanks, everyone.